That's great. Thank you very much, Noreen, and thanks to the Centre for Fiction. Thank you for coming. Thank you to the Institute, Italian Institute of Culture, which is always very supportive of our program. Just one correction there. I will not translate what Nicola reads live. I will be reading Anthony Sugar's magnificent translation of Nicola's work. Translating Nicola's prose contemporaneously would be quite an endeavor, I would think. And I especially want to thank Nicola Lagioia for being here this evening. There was a very real possibility that he wouldn't make it, that he'd end up in hospital, that he'd end up who knows where, because we've been working him way too hard. He's been here for 3 weeks, almost, yes. 2.5 weeks, and has taken a plane every day.
If I
he's
remember
been
well,
here.
yes.
Yes, if you remember well. It could be 3 years.
I suppose 2 weeks, yes.
This is the final event of a long tour, and as I'm sure you all know, it can be very exhausting traveling and talking and being present. So I'm very grateful to Nicola for just putting all of your heart and soul and all of your body into this tour as well.
Yes, but as in a Beckett novel, we can talk even after death. So
we can talk after death. That's what we're trying for this evening. Very good. Listen, I'm going to, because I know that you're rested and relaxed and ready to go, I'm going to jump right in here with a question, something that we've been talking about in the past. I read somebody talking about your first novel, Tre sistemi per sparazzare, the first novel there, as a declaration of war against the conventions of literature, the writerly conventions, against tradition. I want to know what sort of motivated that back in those days. What was the impulse for that declaration of war against conventions, and has it changed over 3-4 books now?
Yes, but it's a war declaring also against ourselves, if we declare war against the tradition. Yes, Michael was spoken about my first novel that has a strange title. The title was 3 Ways of Get Rid of Tolstoy, but without, I don't know how is it in English, senza risparmiare se stessi.
Without holding back, right?
Without holding back. Because I was very young, I was 28, and when you are 28 and you think you are a writer and you are not Thomas Mann, that at 25 wrote Bunderbrock, you need to achieve your own voice and to conquer our own voice as you know from your great critic Harold Bloom, you have to at the same time go against your father, literary fathers, but respect them. It's a nonsense, but it is the only way that we have to get our own voice, because at the same time is not possible. You need your voice, but the tradition is the floor where you put your steps, and so that's why. And
who were some of those literary fathers for you?
For me, the literary, for example, one writer that was so important, an American writer that was so important for me was William Faulkner. Because during this tour, sometimes they asked me, but this family of your book, the family at the center of my novel, Ferocity, is a powerful and corrupted family of the southern east of Italy. They build buildings, they are in real estate, and in this family, corruption and money goes ends by ends. And they asked me, but it was possible this kind of family in another part of Europe or another part of Italy, and I say no, because a typical southern family, not in another part of Europe, but another part of south, yes. And because of this family is a rich family, but it's not a family of bourgeois. They were poor and they become rich in a few times. And so, for example, first I quoted Thomas Mann, are totally different from can be Bunderbrock family, that is the typical northern family in which that kind of family lasts 3 or 4 generations. One generation makes money, second generation protect money, third generation wastes or lose money. In this kind of family, in the same generation, they make money, protect money, can't protect money anymore, and lose on waste money. So it all is so fast. And if you think about, I don't know if you remember Thomas Satpen, the main character of Absalom is that kind of family and that kind of atmosphere. I think that in the 20th century, William Faulkner teach us talking about South as Franz Kafka teach us talking about North. And why there is a red line between all the Souths of the world? In my opinion, yes, there is. I was very not surprised, but it was impressive to me to read an interview to Garcia Marquez when he said Garcia Marquez. Then when he was young, when he was 23, 24. He wrote short stories, and after writing every one of these short stories, he read it again, and it sounds like false money, false coin, false music. There is something wrong in my way of writing, said Garcia Marquez when he was young. And then 2 things happened in his life at the same time, he said. The first thing was that I was, said Garcia Marquez, I was living in a big town in Colombia. I don't remember, it was Bogota or Medellin. And my mother brings me to Aracataca. That was the place of my grandmother. Aracataca began Macondo in Garcia Marquez's novels. In Aracataca, and I arrived in Aracataca in the weeks I was reading like in August, Absalom, and As I Dying, and something happened in my head, because that obviously was totally different setting, totally different times, totally different language, English and Spanish. But I feel that the place, the birthplace of my grandma, has the same atmosphere that I sniff in, I feel in Faulkner's novel. So, for example, William Faulkner was so important with me because reading about Yoknapatawpha County, it was like reading about something that happened in the corner of my house. The relationship between relatives and parents and the son and daughter, son and brother and sister are very, very similar. An Italian author that I love so much, for example, and is not a South writer, but a North writer, I don't know, maybe here he's not so well known, is Beppe Fenoglio. Beppe Fenoglio was the author of 2 masterpieces that are Una questione privata, a private tale, I don't know how is the translation in English, and Il partigiano Johnny the partisan. And I love very much all the rich language writer, and so I love. If I read French literature, I love Jean Genet, and if I read Austria literature, I love Thomas Bernhard, and if I think about here, I love William Faulkner, but also I don't know, Sorbello, for example. And also, and this is a very, we are in New York, it's very interesting, for example, think about Truman Capote. Truman Capote is a metropolitan writer or a provincial writer. It's both. Because if you think about Ollie Golightly in Breakfast at Tiffany, she comes from province, is the voice of the province in the big town. And this is a very exciting, something exciting happened when these things are melt between them. And I love also very much, we talk about, it's important to me, talking about these things here in New York, because in New York there is the great bridge between America and Europe. I remember very much the first pages, wonderful, of Call It Sleep by Henry Roth. It's like, if you read again, you find there the arrival of Europe, of modern Europe in modern America. And in a strange way, if you think about it, Henry Roth is the grandfather of Sorbello and Philip Roth in a totally different way. But this not only because Europe comes to America. It's wonderful even when happened the opposite. Even in a tragic way, think about Hemingway in Paris and then in Milan when he was wounded. And thanks to God, it was not killed, but it was only wounded, because from that earth born a farewell to arms. And or in a tragic way, think about Salinger in one of the most terrible battles of the Second World War in Europe, and think about it becomes one of the most beautiful short stories he wrote, or about even in a tragic way. Kurt Vonnegut in Dresda and the slaughter number, etc., etc. So I love this kind of bridges, even if, of course, is not the example for Faulkner, because Faulkner is all American. It's like Thomas Pynchon. Thomas Pynchon comes from generation and generation of American, but I love.
How is the?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we've don't apologize.
I
I can leave if you like.
I talk so much for a problem that I have. The problem is that I work also in radio in Italy.
Yeah.
And I work in radio, and I read in radio the cultural pages of the newspaper. The first time that I worked there, I was very stressed, because it's the opposite of writing. You can write and rewrite and rewrite. I spent 5 years on this book, writing and rewriting and rewriting. But if you make a mistake in the radio, you can grab your error. And then I lose 4 kilograms in 1 month, the first month that I make radio. And the technician on the other side of the glass, at the end of the month, said to me, "Nicola, but what happened? I feel you seem very sick." "I am very sick." "And why are you very sick?" "I'm very sick because I'm afraid to say a bullshit in the radio." "Oh, Nicola, don't worry. I'm here from 20 or 30 years. You can say in radio all the bullshit that you want. One thing you don't have to do. What? Remain in silence. You can't remain in silence. It's like Shahrazad. You have to talk to save your life." And so that's it.
That's it. All right. Very good. We've talked about this rich engagement with literary forefathers and the tradition. It's linguistic, perhaps first and foremost. It's an engagement with the language that is used by these authors. It's an engagement with the literature of the South, but not only with the literature of the South. Has that changed for you over the course of 4 books? Your first book, you had something to prove. You have less to prove maybe now. Has the relationship with the tradition changed in what we see in Ferocity?
In my opinion, a writer is also a mirror of what, he wants to be a mirror of what happened around him. And from my first novel to my last novel, happened something, that a lot of things changed, even in the style, even in the approach, and it is because a lot of things changed in literary aesthetics. When I became, postmodernism was still alive. Now, no more. And so something changes, because for me, a turning point, there is a writer that closed one door, and there is another writer in the between 20 and 21st century, and there is another writer that opened another door. The writer that closed one door was, in my opinion, David Foster Wallace, in which a kind of postmodernism arrived at his top. I feel very close to him, because the problems in his book were often our problems living in this age, etc., etc. But this is after 2, 3, 4 books, there was the risk that it becomes a blind vicolo cieco, a blind street. And the writer that opened for the 21st century, in my opinion, the door that Foster Wallace closed was Roberto Bolagna. Because Roberto Bolagna, it was a Chilean, yes, that is Roberto Bolagna is another bridge between South America and Europe, because it's a different way. It isn't the from postmodernism to realism. Saying realism is not enough. I don't know how to call it. I'm not a critic, but yes, I left postmodernism on my shoulder. That ironic way of thinking about but that ironic way of telling stories. At a certain point, becomes like the orchestra, the singers on the Titanic. It was a little bit nonsense if the iceberg is very, very close, and then maybe you have to change your approach, and that's why a writer like in the past Faulkner or Solbello or Thomas Bernard becomes for me more important than, or for example, if I have to mention one writer alive here in the United States, I don't know if he's well known or not, Marilyn Robinson. She's kind of approach. She's very connected with our time, even if she was so far from my way of working, of picturing things. So yes, there was and the important change was that I become maybe because I become more brave. I began to talk about my place, my birthplace. In my first novel, I don't, there weren't Puglia, South, my place, and then I made the opposite that makes often the writer, because in the first novels, writers talks about themselves, their place, etc., and then after, for me what was the opposite from my third book, this is the fourth one, I become to set my novels in this strange place.
Why? How do you explain that? How did you find your way back home?
Yes.
How?
Why? Why? Because maybe because I went away from when you go away from your birthplace is it takes maybe it takes year before you know what have you left, and it's easier even to write about it, but there is nothing new in this. A lot of writers went away from their home and then they write on their home. No, the most revolutionary writer in the early 20th century, James Joyce, went away from Dublin. He hated Dublin. He feel exiled but nobody exiled him. And then hating Dublin, he wrote only about Dublin. And I don't hate Bari, but I don't love Bari. It's a strange thing. When I come back in Bari, for me, it's like moving in a ghost town. And the problem is that the ghost that I see often is my ghost. Here I am with my first girlfriend, we are kissing, but it's like in comics, with the line. Yes. Here is my friend, but my friend is no more in Bari because he lives in Paris now, and now it's a strange ghost town, and so I feel inspired by these things. And then there are my roots, and the roots are. So the connection with your first question, the roots are at the same time your strength, but also your wound, your tua ferita, your wound, and it's very interesting to write about it.
So the subject matter has become more intimate. Would that be correct to say that?
Yes.
And how has that more intimate subject matter had an effect on your stylistic choices, or has it had an effect? Do you think you're writing differently?
Yes, it becomes, in my opinion, it becomes more vertical, like way of writing, and I hope to write now in a deeper way than in the past, and I was more interested in. I'm interested in society, but I'm interested in a relationship between people that loves or hates each other, because it's a well without pozzo senza fondo, was a well.
A bottomless well.
Yes, yes, exactly, and then maybe. And also because I was interested in families. It's the first time that I wrote this novel and the previous one about family, because it's difficult to talk about Italy without talking about family, and this kind of family is a particular way. So maybe the way of writing changed with this all these because of this. Changing.
I want to stay for just one more question on the way of writing, on the stylistic choices. There, I'm not sure now who said it. You were afraid I was going to go silent for a second there? Go, tell me.
No.
Go ahead.
No. I remember what I think.
I don't remember who said it, but we talk a lot about voice in writing, and somebody said, the true signature of a writer is not the sentence, but the paragraph. The paragraph is the signature of the writer. And I think about that a lot when I read you, because your paragraphs really are unique. They are signatures. They do denote you and your writing very strongly. And one of the characteristics I think about, or of those paragraphs, is the way that you contain within a paragraph different temporal planes at times, different planes of reality at times, without signaling to the reader that that's coming. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that stylistic choice and what's behind it?
Yeah, a novel can try to be similar to real life, to takes the way real and the interior life works. And for example, the sense of time is not linear in my novel. but our sense of time during the day is not linear, because we act thinking about the past, we act thinking about what could happen in the future, and at the same way is also full of voices. No, every paragraph in there are a lot of voices, a lot of point of views, but there is, in my opinion, one of the beautiful things of a novel, because in my opinion a novel is not a trial, and if it's a trial without judgment, because we are more interested in investigation than in judgment. And to make a good investigation, you have to give to all the characters the right to tell their stories. And then the novel, like real life, is the place where dissonant voices coexist. And even because novels and literature is always not in the opposite way, but not in the same way of the mainstream atmosphere of the historical period, which is our historical period. We are in the years of the iPad, iPhone, iMac is also a I something. But an I word is a nonsense, because the word is not the place of the ego, it's the place of us. And maybe a novel could remind us to these things. And the also beautiful things of novels, and that's why all this point of view, but is a technique, is an old technique, not only in literature, even in movies. If you remember Citizen Kane by Orson Welles, there are a lot of point of view to tell the story of this technique makes us, in my opinion, makes us feel all in the same ship. All the point of view are important. If not, why we emphasize with Raskolnikov that he is a murderer in Crime and Punishment? Literature makes what journalism can't make. You know, journalism have to, if I have to write an article for a newspaper, I have to the pen like a sword to divide bad and good, evil, and but in literature no. In literature no, because the ambiguity is a gift because life is in this way. So that's why I think there are all these voices and the time not linear, because in real life we feel in this way.
Tell us a little bit. Last question, then we'll have a little reading. A little bit about the family at the center of this novel. You said it's an especially southern story. It's a southern family, very different from the family, a similar family that you might find in northern Europe. What is it about them that embodies the south and embodies southern Italy in particular?
Why this kind of family in south? There was, if I remember well, it was an American journalist that comes in Italy in the 60s, comes in South, and not only for the South. He said that Italy is the country of amoral familism. What is amoral? What means amoral familism? It means that the sense of common good, obviously not for each family, but it becomes between the family walls, and is okay, but ends also between the family walls. Outside there is not the sense of community. Outside there is a land to conquer. There is the wilderness. There is and this family is a little bit in this way, and I think that it is similar to reality, because the first time is a funny thing. first time that I talk about this book in Bari. It was a problem to talk about this book in Bari because it was the place where the book is set. It's my birthplace. My parents. It was more stress in Bari than in New York. And when talks about this book, a woman in the first line, after that I was talking this kind of families, says to me, okay, but this novel is based on true or real facts. And I say, no, it's not based on real facts, it's all fiction, it's all made of fiction, because it's made of fiction, the characters are made of fiction, it's made of fiction, the facts is not made of fiction, the reality that produces them. And she said to me, okay, stop with this theoretical stuff. This family is Matarrese family or Di Gennaro family, that are the two families that in Bari are the most powerful family, that are in buildings. And I say, no, it's all fiction, my lady. Okay. 1 year later, the book, the novel, won the Strega Prize. And when you win the Strega Prize, it's like about the National Book Award, they invite you to TV shows. And they invite me to these TV shows. I went there because it's good to promote the book, even after the Strega Prize. But it was a kind of TV show. I don't know if ERA works in the same way, that the guests didn't arrive at the same time. And I arrived, and then there was an empty chair, and there was the showman that made me question on the book. I answer, and then after 10 minutes I was talking about novel. To talk about economy, arrived the second guest, and it was one of the Matarrese family. And he arrived, he sat on the chair beside me, he looked at me, he smiled at me, and he said, I read the book, you did a good job, and if I say, you can believe it. And so from that day, I don't know anymore if it's fiction or non-fiction. But I suppose it's fiction. I hope it's fiction. No, that's for answer to your question. Yes, it's a kind of family. I know, I talk in a funny way of a tragedy book, but something I have do to not to make the atmosphere too dark. But it's a tragic family in fact, because it's a family, as I say before, that is most interested in power than in human relationship between their members. But fortunately, sooner or later, in this kind of family, born sooner or later the wrong son, that are the right son, that are the son that go in the opposite direction of their family. That in Ferocity are the elder daughter Clara and the third son, that is Michele. And is an investigation in this novel because Clara dies, but dies at page 4, so it's not a disclaimer. And she died, and Michele investigates on her death. So in this family happen a lot of things. It investigates on this family, and when you investigate on your family, not only in Bari, also in New York, you make ugly discoveries often. So don't do it, but Michele does, and discovers a lot of things.
Shall we read something?
Yes, if you want.
Yes, and as Noreen said earlier, there was Nicola's book in Italy is published by a little publisher in Italy called Einaudi. So for those of you who read Italian, you should look for it. So support your small publishers.
Because my English is broken English in orality, but in reading it was terrible. So I prefer in Italian. L'inizio facciamo, che dice? Facciamo questa cosa qua. Bene. The beginning of the book, there is a lost highway and a lost girl on a lost highway. Una pallida luna di 3/4 illuminava la statale alle 2 del mattino. La strada collegava la provincia di Taranto a Bari e a quell'ora era di solito deserta. Correndo verso nord, la carreggiata entrava e usciva da un asse immaginario, lasciandosi alle spalle uliveti e vitigni e brevi file di capannoni simili ad aviorimesse. Al chilometro 38 compariva una stazione di servizio. Non ce n'erano altre per parecchio e oltre al self-service erano da poco attivi distributori automatici di caffè e cibi freddi. Per segnalare la novità, il proprietario aveva fatto piazzare uno sky dancer sul tetto dell'autofficina, uno di quei pupazzi alti 5 metri alimentati da grossi motori a ventola. Il piazzista gonfiabile ondeggiava nel vuoto e avrebbe continuato a farlo fino alle luci del mattino. Più che altro dava l'idea di un fantasma senza pace. Superata la strana apparizione, il paesaggio continuava piatto e uniforme per chilometri. Sembrava quasi di avanzare nel deserto. Poi, in lontananza, un diadema sfrigolante segnalava la città. Oltre il guardrail c'erano invece campi incolti, alberi da frutto e poche ville ben nascoste dalle siepi. Tra quegli spazi si muovevano gli animali notturni. Gli allocchi tracciavano nell'aria lunghe linee oblique, planavano fino a sbattere le ali a pochi palmi dal suolo, in modo che gli insetti, spaventati dalla tempesta di arbusti e foglie morte, venissero allo scoperto decretando la propria stessa fine. Un grillo disalineava le antenne su una foglia di gelsomino e impalpabile, tutto intorno, simile a una grande marea sospesa nel vuoto, una flotta di falene si muoveva nella luce polarizzata della volta celeste. Identiche a se stesse da milioni di anni, le piccole creature dalle ali pelose erano tutt'uno con la formula che garantiva la stabilità del loro volo. Attaccate al filo invisibile della luna, perlustravano il territorio a migliaia, ondeggiando da un lato all'altro per evitare gli attacchi dei rapaci. Poi, come accadeva ogni notte da una ventina d'anni, alcune centinaia di unità staccarono i contatti con il cielo. Credendo di avere ancora a che fare con la luna, puntarono i faretti di un piccolo gruppo di ville. Avvicinandosi alle luci artificiali, l'inclinazione aurea del loro volo si spezzava. Il movimento diventava un'ossessiva danza circolare che solo la morte poteva interrompere. Un mucchio nerastro di insetti giaceva nella veranda della prima di queste abitazioni. Si trattava di una villa con piscina, una costruzione su 2 livelli dalle linee irregolari. Ogni sera, prima di andare a letto, i proprietari lasciavano accese tutte le luci esterne. Erano convinti che un giardino illuminato scoraggiasse i ladri. Lampade a muro in veranda, grandi ovali in termoplastica, ai piedi delle rose. Una serie di tenui diffusori verticali segnava il percorso fino alla piscina. Questo teneva il ciclo delle falene a uno stato di immanenza. Carcasse in veranda, agonizzanti sulla plastica bollente, in volo fra i cespugli di rosa. A pochi metri di distanza, come era successo la notte prima e quella prima ancora, un giovane gatto randagio si muoveva circospetto sul prato all'inglese. Confidava in un'altra busta di immondizia dimenticata fuori. Sotto le fronde dei rododendri, un aspide tendeva le mascelle nel tentativo di ingoiare un topo ancora vivo. La pesante barriera di foglie che separava la villa dalla gemella iniziò a scuotersi. Il gatto tese le orecchie, portò una zampa verso l'alto. Soltanto le falene continuavano indisturbate la loro danza nell'aria primaverile. Fu sullo sfondo dell'impalpabile nuvolaglia grigio-verde che la ragazza fece il suo ingresso nel giardino. Era nuda e pallida e ricoperta di sangue. Aveva le unghie dei piedi laccate di rosso, belle caviglie dalle quali partiva un paio di gambe slanciate ma non secche, fianchi morbidi, un seno dritto e pieno, avanzava un passo dietro l'altro, lenta, barcollante, tagliando il prato in 2. And this is the Italian sound.
And now for the Australian sound. A pale 3/4 moon lit up the state highway at 2 in the morning. The road connected the province of Taranto to Bari, and at that time of night it was usually deserted. As it ran north, the roadway oscillated, aligning with and diverging from an imaginary axis, leaving behind it olive groves and vineyards and short rows of industrial sheds that resembled airplane hangars. At kilometre marker 38, a gas station appeared. It was the last one for a while, and aside from the self-service pumps, vending machines that served coffee and cold food had recently been installed. To promote the new attractions, the owner had installed a sky dancer on the roof of the auto repair shop, one of those puppets that stand 15 feet tall, pumped up by powerful motorized fans. The inflatable barca fluttered in the empty air and would continue to do so until the morning light. More than anything else, it made one think of a restless ghost. After passing that strange apparition, the countryside ran on flat and unvarying for miles. It was almost like moving through the desert. Then in the distance, a sizzling tiara marked the city. Beyond the guardrail, in contrast, lay untilled fields, fruit trees, and a few country houses nicely concealed by hedges. Through those expanses moved nocturnal animals. Tawny owls traced long slanting lines through the air. Gliding, they waited to flap their wings until they were just inches from the ground so that insects, terrified by the sudden tempest of shrubs and dead leaves, would rush out into the open, sealing their own fates. A cricket, perched on a jasmine leaf, extended its antennae unevenly, and all around, impalpably, like a vast tide suspended in the air, a fleet of moths moved in the polarized light of the celestial vault. Unchanged over millions of years, the tiny, fuzzy-winged creatures were one with the equation that ensured their stability in flight. Tied to the moon's invisible thread, they were scouring the territory by the thousands, swaying from side to side to dodge the attacks of birds of prey. Then, as had been happening every night for the past 20 or so years, a few hundred units broke their link with the sky. Believing they were still dealing with the moon, they homed in on the floodlights of a small group of detached houses. As they approached the artificial light, the golden angle of their flight was shattered. Their movements became an obsessive circular dance that only death could interrupt. A nasty black heap of insects lay on the veranda of the first of those residences. It was a small villa with a pool, a blocky, two-story construction. Every night before going to bed, the owners turned on all the outdoor lights. They were convinced that an illuminated yard discouraged burglars. Wall-mounted floodlights on the veranda, large oval polyurethane lights at the foot of the rose bushes. A series of faint vertical light fixtures lined the path to the swimming pool. This kept the cycle of moths in a state of imminence. Carcasses on the veranda, tortured bodies on the scalding hot plastic, in flight among those rose bushes. Just a few yards away, as it had the night before and the night before that, a young stray cat was moving cautiously across the lawn. It was hoping for another bag of garbage left out by mistake. Beneath the branches of the rhododendrons, a snake was splaying its jaws as it struggled to devour a still live mouse. The heavy barrier of leaves that separated the villa from its twin next door started to shake. The cat cocked its ears, raised a paw in the air. Only the moths continued their dance, undisturbed in the spring air. It was against the background of the impalpable grey-green bank of haze that the young woman made her entrance into the garden. She was naked and ashen and covered in blood. She had red polish on her toenails, nice ankles, and a pair of legs that were long but not skinny, soft hips, a full, taut pair of breasts. She put one foot in front of the other, slowly, tottering, cutting straight across the lawn. I guess we've sort of done things around the wrong way. We've turned the evening upside down. I'm sorry for the confusion, Noreen, but are there any questions from the audience for Nicola about Ferocity or about almost anything else? Yeah.
Question about your relationship with writing, actually. Do you feel that writing takes away time from your life, or is the other way around? That life takes away time from your writing?
For me, it would be beautiful if it was the first thing, but it's the second for me. I try all my life trying to write and so to put away and I did incredible things for having every day the time to write. For example, for 3 years, but it was 1 year during I was writing Ferocity. They asked me to be one of the selectors in Venice Film Festival. If you are a selector in Venice Film Festival, for 3 months you have to go in Venice, but not in Venice, in Lido of Venice. And remember, Death in Venice by Thomas Mann was set in Lido in Venice, not in Venice. And when I arrived there, I understood why. And because in April, May, Lido of Venezia is like, yesterday I was in Iowa. Iowa was like Carnival. Okay. And, if compared with Lido of Venezia on April or May. And then we had, when you work there, you have to see about 1,200 movies. In fact, my friends say, "Oh, what lucky you!" No, lucky you from the first to the 200 movies. From 201 movies to it's like Ludovico Cure in Clockwork Orange. It's about that kind of things. And then the problem was that the projection, the movies started at 9:30 in the morning, and every day for 3 months I woke up at 4 a.m. So because even writing 10 or 15 lines for me was important to keep in touch with the novel, to keep in touch with the atmosphere, to keep in touch with the characters. And so all my life, the problem, you made me an existential question, and so I have to answer in a private way. The problem with me, that for me is at the same time, I want time to write, but I want also do something else, because staying 5 years close in one room is I don't know what went out after five years, and not me anymore. Something strange, but maybe not more. And so life also is the rest of life is important. I worked in a publishing house. I love work with others. I worked as editor in a publishing house, and so taking care of the work of the other writers was important. It's a way not to think the same way every day, every time, I know that there was the joke by Italo Calvino that said, how can I explain to my wife then that when I was working through a window, I'm working. But it's true. We always think about that problem with the character, that in the plot there is a problem, etc., etc. But I think that is a struggle between, not between life and writing, between these two different kind of living that are what we call writing and what we call life. And
about something you said earlier when you were asked about the influences, the literary influences, and you named a great many authors, American and other, almost all of whom were male. And a little while later, you spoke about verticality in your own writing, that that was a change, something that had begun to happen. And I know here in America, often the conversation about women versus men writers goes to women being the sort of the owners of the domestic or of the intimate, and men are the ones credited with these sort of social canvas, these larger, which I think is anyway a false dichotomy. But I wonder what your feeling about that was, your own literary forebear seeming to have been largely male, and now your own movement as a writer toward this verticality, which is often, ascribed to the female.
Yes, but I mentioned I love female writers that are able to do both things vertically. In fact, I mentioned the first Marilyn Robinson. Marilyn Robinson is able to do this, or Toni Morrison too. Toni Morrison too. If we read Beloved or Jess, there is a very deep investigation on the relationship between characters, but you feel all the world. According to me, in my opinion, female are as they become horizontal after being vertical. When I read, for example, Virginia Woolf, or even in poetry, Emily Dickinson, is as they talk about all the world, but from inside of the earth. Is a strange thing, but I love very much. And if I have to choose a great female writer that from I am in depth writing Ferocity, no doubt she is Charlotte Bronte. Because the relationship that there is between the two brothers of my novel, between Clara and between Michele. Michele investigates on Clara's death and he's led by Clara's voice. Clara's voice is guide, but Clara is dead. But this is not because my novel has something of supernatural, nothing about magic realism, but because it happened in real life. The people that we loved, people that were important to us, at a certain point they put their voice inside us without their will, and this voice is a form of living, even if they are dead, if they are far away, and it works in a wonderful way between Catherine and Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights. Is beyond the death of one of the two. So, for example, Charlotte Bronte comes before Freud. For example, Charlotte Bronte and before Dostoevsky. It's incredible. The way she's able to dig in our way of not only of thinking but of feeling. That I don't know if is connected with the brain, and so she was the first neuroscientist, or with the kind of things that we call soul, that we still don't know what is. So and I like also the female writer that comes from Promise. When I yesterday arrived in Iowa City, the first, but I moved when I say the first thing that I think, in the same way that I arrived in Chicago and I say, okay, so bello, I arrived in Iowa City thinking about Flannery O'Connor. Of Flannery O'Connor, I love not only her books, but I love also, come si chiama? I pavoni, also the...
Pavoni? Peacocks, the peacocks.
Also the peacock of Flannery O'Connor, I love. And Flannery O'Connor is not only the novel, even the letters she sent to her editor, to her friend, and she sent a letter full of poetical things till a few days before dying, and it was and what is literature, and what is where starts and where ends literature? I really don't know. And for one of the most philosophers of the 20th century, for example, for me is Simone Weil. Simone Weil, more than Heidegger, more than Sartre, more than Foucault. Because Simone Weil, we don't have understand yet all Simone Weil. So yes, I am my debt to them is great. They are giants.
May I ask you then the predictable question, which is what you said about Charles Bronte is what you also said about Elena Ferrante. So can you say something about whatever you like?
They
Which came to my mind because of this, and also because of what you said when you talked about becoming a famous writer and having to go to talks, etc. How do you feel about that, and about the freedom Elena Ferrante counterpart could afford, which is not having to deal with this, not having to deal with... Vuole che gliela traduca?
Sì, cioè tra Emily Bronte e Elena Ferrante.
No, tra Emily Bronte e Elena Ferrante la cosa che lei ha detto è che le persone a cui siamo molto affezionate portiamo dentro di noi la loro voce. E pensavo alla Ferrante anche mentre lei diceva che quando ha vinto il premio Strega ha dovuto cominciare a fare interviste alla televisione, mentre quando penso alla Ferrante la grande libertà della Ferrante è stata quella di non dover fare le interviste. E poi volevo sapere le banalità, cosa pensa di questo svelamento della... Se vuole parlare, ma anche no.
No, okay. About identity. Yes, but yes, because I interviewed, but it was by email. I interviewed Ferrante by email, not by. I want to say, yeah, okay. No, because people ask me, the interview. No, it was by email. There was. Sorry if I answer with question of literature with the answers full of. Literature too. But there was a little book by Marcel Proust called Comte Sainte-Beuve versus Sainte-Beuve. Sainte-Beuve was a critic, French critic, very famous at the age of Proust, that said that biography is important to understand the books of the novelists. And Proust was not agree with him. And so versus and me too versus Sainte-Beuve. Are not important the identity of are important the books. Who is Homero? We don't know. Who is Shakespeare? We don't know very well who is Shakespeare, but we remember the beginning, of Macbeth. Where shall we dream it again? In thunder, lightning, or rain? When the hurly barley is done, when the battle is lost and won, that will be here, the set of sun. Where the place? Upon the hat, there to meet with Macbeth. Who wrote these lines? We don't know. But the important thing is that lines exists. Who is, but you have here on the corner, Thomas Pynchon. Who is Thomas Pynchon? We don't know. But the important thing is that Gravity Rainbows exists. And so there are a lot of, in the past, the artists were anonymous.
No, ma per lei è pesante fare l'artista pubblico invece?
No,
vabbè che sta alla radio, quindi.
It's funny. It's another sport. It's another kind of sport. It's talking about literature. Obviously, is not making literature. Is not reading literature. Reading literature is the most important things. And so you can stay hidden, but don't stay hidden is even beautiful because you can in public life. Think about the opposite of Elena Ferrante, Pasolini, always present in the public, and the body of Pasolini was also important, not for the novels or the movies. Accattone is enough for me, but the public are two different opposite way of staying on the stage, because in both cases they stay on the stage, and they are Pasolini and Elena Ferrante the same rights to do what they do or what he did, in my opinion.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there, but Nicola and Michael will be around to chat with you. We're selling books in the back, and there's wine and sparkling water. So let's thank them for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Bravo.